Good evening, everybody. We're back with another Evermore, and what a show we are going to have tonight, lads. We are talking about back-to-back wins. That's right. You didn't mishear me. Back-to-back wins off the back of an unbelievable 3-1 hammering of the Scouse Sunderland as Everton. I'm joined by the Lynchman, and I'm joined by Adam from over the pond. How are you, lads? Are we still buzzing?
Buzzing, yeah, mate. Absolutely buzzing. How are you, mate? You well?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very good. I've just got my voice back from yesterday's post-match when I was having a rant. I think what did I call Gordon? I think I called him a Scouse smack rat or something. I think I did. But we'll get stuck into those shit houses in a minute, because I was very surprised at how poor they were, but also how bad they were in terms of the sportsmanship as well. But just coming to you first, Adam, on this, mate. Obviously, you watched over in America with the time difference, mate, compared to us. How was it for you, mate? You watched it in the boozer, I believe. Were your hair standing on the back of your neck, mate?
Yeah, what's left of them were. Yeah, it was.
I'm nearly there, mate. Don't worry, I'm nearly there.
It was a very strange day, actually, because the 7:45 kickoff in England meant that it kicked off here at 1:45. So I worked half a day and then went into town and met up with a supporters group here in Minneapolis, which is great. There was 13 of us for a Tuesday afternoon. It's a really good group. We can get 20 or 25 on a weekend. So it was great to see everybody. But yeah, I was super nervous. I mean, it was strange. After Watford, I felt so deflated. I think I came on with you guys and we were talking about how terrible that whole day felt. Everything about the game felt terrible. I was really down after that. And I really felt like, you know what? It's sort of like the hope is vanishing out of me day by day. And then we come back and we beat Leeds, and that changes everything. Of course, it's the roller coaster. So going into yesterday, I felt like there was a bit of extra pressure because we had actually won a game. So doing back-to-back Premier League wins is incredibly rare. Obviously, it hasn't happened all season for us. I think we ended last season with back-to-back wins, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously we haven't had it this season. But yeah, very nervous, a little bit surprised by some of the lineup calls. I was glad to see Matty Targett start. Sounds like Dan Burns probably got a bit of a minor knock. It was interesting to see what happens this weekend with him. Surprised Bruno didn't start. But, Eddie called it perfectly. And the last time I was on this, we talked about how maybe Eddie hadn't got some decisions right with team selection and in-game management. So all in all, I mean, it was a really perfect day. The crowd were unbelievable on the big screen in the pub. I'm sure it was obviously at the game as well. Flags at both ends, right from the kickoff, getting into Jordan Pickford. I'm sure the fans loved that, getting into their team. And they just didn't fancy it. I mean, you could tell from the minute the game started, they did not fancy it. They don't have the players for a relegation scrap. You can see that already, I think. Whereas our boys were really, really up for it right from the first minute. The pressing was fantastic. The pressure we were putting them under was really unbelievable. I'm sure we'll talk more about individual players throughout our conversation, but I thought there were some really tremendous, sort of really affirming performances from a number of the players from back to front. I thought the Sells, despite the own goal, which was more luck than anything else, was really tremendous. I really only remember one dodgy bouncing ball at the edge of our box from the Sells. Is usually good for 3 or 4 of those. But man of the match performance from him, from Trippier, from all sorts of different players. And really, just to conclude, I mean, it feels like right now that are 2 teams going in completely opposite directions. And I'm not sure, if I was an Everton fan this morning or this afternoon, I would not feel great about what that looked like. So 2 teams are heading in opposite directions, and that feels really good to say today.
Absolutely. But we're on YouTube tonight, guys. Please jump in the comments. Let us know what you think about the game, as Jeff's done there. Nice to see you, Jeff. Thanks for joining in, mate. Please, for the Sells, you needed some cover from the fullbacks. It's interesting. I'm going to get stuck into that in a minute, Jeff, but I'm going to bring in the Lynchman, who was live at St. James's Park. He's only just got his voice back. His head's only just stopped ringing from the amount of ale that he was supping with Newcastle fans in royalty all evening, mate. How are you, James? Did you enjoy the game?
Oh, mate, honestly, look, I've not stopped smiling all day. As you rightly say, I woke up this morning and I didn't think I was going to be able to do the show, to be honest. I'd completely lost my voice this morning, literally completely lost my voice. Thankfully, yeah, it's just about come back. But yeah, mate, what a game that was. Just everything about the night was perfect. The build-up was electric. You could feel walking into the ground that it was such a massive game. It just had that big game feel. The atmosphere was first class, the best atmosphere I've known at the ground in a number of years. And what a rocking St. James's Park it was. And look, the players didn't disappoint. They fed off that energy that we were giving them. Every single one of them turned up last night. So many exceptional individual performances, as Adam rightly touched on before. Trippier was just outstanding. I thought he was man of the match. He's the best fullback I've ever seen in my 27 years supporting this football club. He completely marked Andros Townsend out of the game. I thought Maximin was superb. One of the better games he's had this season. And he was unplayable at times. This was a much more disciplined performance from him, and one that we haven't really seen from him this season. He picked the right pass at all the right times, which again he hasn't often done this season. But yeah, great play for the second goal, and I was delighted to see Fraser finally get his goal. I think that's Fraser's first league goal for us. I think he's only ever scored once was before that against Blackburn in the League Cup.
Yeah, I think it was Blackburn
on his debut. Yeah, and again, Fraser he played his part in Trippier's free kick as well, winning the free kick. So overall, I thought we were excellent. We played like a team. We pressed them high at the pitch. We worked well as a unit. We were comfortable in possession, and yeah, we thoroughly deserved the win and the 3 points.
Absolutely. I mean, as Mark says, the atmosphere was incredible with war flags at the stadium. You know, it's amazing. Yeah. I seen Trippier talk after the game. You know, obviously, I mean, the free kick was just unbelievable. I mean, the technique. You know, I think I said that's the best free kick I've seen taken since Johan Cabaye against Manchester United. I think it was almost similar in terms of the sound hitting the back of the net and the roar St. James's. And Trippier actually said that he's never seen anything like that, and he said he was being genuine, and he seems a very genuine guy, so I believe it. He's never felt anything like that atmosphere, that noise, that electricity from the crowd when that ball went in the back of the net. It was absolutely superb. I mean, you know, looking at the individuals, guys, I mean, bit of an unsung hero for me. The only one kind of new debutant at the transfer window who made the team was Matty Targett. And for some people, he might have gone under the radar. I thought it was sensational. He was so brilliant. Reliable. His positional sense. I mean, weirdly enough, St. Maximin was amazing, right? But he still lost the ball once or twice. The difference was he had a guy to cover his arse this time. And I think it made St. Maximin look better, didn't it, guys? Because, you know, when he made those mistakes, Targett was there to sweep with the pieces. I mean, even in the own goal, I mean, he clears it off the line and a brilliant bit of defending. It's so unlucky when you're down there at the bottom, hits you in the face and goes in the back of the net. But as you rightly say, Adam, Lascelles got a bit of shit on social media, which I think was a bit unfair. You know, he showed real kind of tenacity, real leadership to come back, you know, and to get that header in. And then after that, even the second half, he put in some crunching challenges. I think
Lascelles is always going to get stick, Chris, isn't it? He's one of them players that just a lot of fans out there just don't like him for whatever reason. Yeah. And you know, that's fair enough. That's their opinion. But even if he does have a brilliant game, I still think a lot of the fan base just don't think he's good enough. And it is a shame because he was very good last night.
He was very good. I think. Sorry, Chris. Just one last point on the Lascelles, and then a bigger point on the team. I think the thing that frustrates fans with Lascelles is actually it's not that we don't think, or certainly for me, it's not that we don't think he's necessarily good enough. It's that we know from previous experiences that he can play at that level that we saw last night. So when he makes these mistakes, when he shuts off and lets a player run by him, doesn't watch a ball over the top, misses a tackle. It's like we know he's better than that, actually, which is what frustrates me the most. But here's my sort of final point on the game yesterday. Really, really important development for Eddie Howe and the group, I think, is that the last two games now, Leeds and yesterday, they took the lead and didn't look like losing it, which is a complete difference, right? In every other game, from Watford to Norwich to Brentford, obviously, to games before Eddie Howe showed up, when we took the lead, it almost felt like that was sort of the worst thing to happen because we were more likely to lose it, particularly if we scored early, like we did against Watford, 50th minute, 52nd minute, whatever it was. It just felt like we immediately went into our shell and were trying not to concede. Whereas yesterday and against Leeds, I actually think our performance got better as the game went on once we took the lead. particularly against Leeds. But I think last night as well, we never looked like losing that lead in either game. And that is a huge development for Eddie Howe. That fills me with a huge amount of confidence going into this run of games we've got now, that if we take the lead, we don't have to panic. It could be a really good thing.
Yeah, I think, to be fair,
it's night and day, the difference between that performance last night and the Watford performance. Because you're right, Adam, it's all about in-game management. And this is what we're starting to do better now. Well, in the last 2 games, that is. That Watford game, we sat back, we were treated, we didn't know what to do when we took the lead. It was a completely different story last night. Adam, really, really good point, mate.
No, definitely. And just to touch on it as well, and I think Eddie Howe said it in his post-match comments. He talked about the mentality of the players. He talked about the buying into the mentality. Just to get your opinion on this, James, as well. The media and the friends of Steve Bruce and everyone else who just let Steve Bruce get off with a free pass, really, I don't think they realise the damage that he did to these players' mentality. That when they were down, they looked for leadership on the sideline at an experienced pro, a former brilliant player, captain, winner, and he gave them nothing. Whereas when they look to the sideline now, they've got somebody there that can look at, they can anchor themselves to and get them right in the game. And I think you're seeing that in players like Joe Willock, aren't you, James? The way he's developing in the games.
Fully agree. I didn't think Joe Willock had a good first half, I will be honest, but no. I thought second half he was outstanding. If you look at what he brings to that team, and to be honest with you, I've said this before about Willock, I would like to see him further up the pitch a little bit more. I know he did a job for us last night in centre midfield, and I'm not disputing that. But we need goals now. Without Wilson, Wilson's out for the season. We're going to talk about him a bit later on. Chris Wood, for me, doesn't look like he's going to get the goals that we need to stay up. I think Willock should be playing, or at least tried, as a number 10. It would mean that we would have to change the formation, because I know Eddie Howe likes playing this 4-3-3, and I understand that, and it has worked very well these last 2 games. He won't change it with Villa, I know that, but it would be nice to see maybe against a better team how Willock could play as a 10. But yeah, you're right, in terms of mentality, in terms of leadership on the pitch now, players are starting to get their mojo back again. They're starting to have belief in themselves, and they're starting to think, do you know what? We've got quality. We've got the fan base behind us. We can make differences in games now, and they're starting to take more risks on the pitch, which is what we weren't seeing maybe kind of 3 or 4 games ago. And it's paying off in spades, and we're starting to really perform as a team now.
Absolutely. And then just in the comments there, Di's in the comments, he loves Joe Willock. I'm sure he loves you too, Di. Thanks very much for the comments, mate. And we've got a bit of a full back debate going on, mate. You've set the ball rolling here. So Warren Barton, yes, he's the pundit on Fox Sports. I couldn't agree with what you've done. I love Warren Barton, but to be honest with you, Trippier has the potential to eclipse all of these guys. I mean, never mind the free kick. I mean, just the performance, the leadership, the aura on the park. We've said it week on, week out, guys, ever since he's come to the club, and he's getting better and better as the games go on. People look to him for leadership, and he's a quality player. Dele Alli, his former teammate, when they were both at Spurs, Dele Alli was supposed to be the next big thing, and one of the superstar players. Dele Alli was shocking when he come on for Everton. He was dreadful. I'm so glad we didn't get him on loan, but there was one point in the game where Trippier got the ball off him and just knew exactly what he was going to do, and I think he won a free kick, and that shows you how far apart those players have gone in the trajectory since they've been at Spurs together. And it shows you even more just the kind of mentality of Trippier, the professionalism of Trippier to make himself a better player. He's come back from Spain a much better player than he did when he left. And we're going to benefit from that, lads, aren't we?
Agreed.
Absolutely. No question about it. So I suppose going on to what you said about Chris Wood, James, that's probably the only negative for me, I think, in the game. Game was class. Result was brilliant. We dragged Everton right down. We're out of the relegation zone. Everything's great. But Chris Wood just looks so far off the pace in the Premier League. If you didn't know he played for Burnley, you would have thought, where have we got this knacker from? Because his touch is awful. He can't keep up with the movement of his teammates. And the header, Adam, coming to you on the header, my mother could have scored that, and she's 5'2", man.
Yeah, it was one of those moments, wasn't it, where you can feel his career either going like this or like this, depending on what
on
happens
the edge of the cliff.
with that header. I felt a bit sorry for him actually, because I don't know if it was just a sort of watching it on TV or if it was different in the stadium, but I think he might have thought he was offside, so he sort of froze for a minute. Which says more about confidence and ability, I think, right? A confident striker there just takes his body momentum through that ball and into the goal. But so yeah, it was either a bit of panic or a lack of confidence, or in some ways it might just be the pressure he feels like he's under now, knowing that Callum Wilson is mostly out probably for the rest of the season, or certainly for the next couple of months. So I think it was a bit of pressure, bit of nerves. But yeah, when he scored that offside goal, I really, really wanted that to count, because I sort of, you know what it feels like for a striker. The longer that time goes between your debut and getting that first goal, the worse it's going to feel. I'm sure he's banging them in training. It happens all the time, right? You see a player that just gets a bit of a mental block on the pitch, but it'll come. He'll score off his backside or something this weekend, and it'll come after that. Fingers crossed. Anyway,
that was the most shoulder Amiobi chance I've ever seen. That would just hit them and kind of went in the back of the net, really. But yeah, Dies in the comments there. He said he thought Wood was unlucky. He won a lot of good headers.
You did,
and the others didn't read. Yeah, that's a good shout. The header was shite, mind. It was Die. To be fair, I mean, he did win a lot of flick-ons. Just bringing you in for this, James, if you're able to talk, mate. I think Eddie Howe was on the phone there, mate. Is he ringing you to call you up for next week?
Yeah, do you know what? Typical. My door hasn't gone all day, and then it's just out and forget about it. It's probably
it's
probably
Chris
delivery.
Wood. He wants to have a word with us, not to take the piss out of it. But no, I mean,
look, you're right. Look, he didn't really have a very good game, did he? To be honest with you, again, he wasn't awful, but you know, when you've got 10 other players around him who were pretty excellent on the day, he was the one slightly who let us down. But I thought it looks like Eddie Howe's kind of using him slightly as a bit of a decoy to bring other players into the game a little bit more. Ryan Fraser, I thought, really came into his own last night, and you've got to say probably a lot of that was to do with the headers that Wood was winning. But he's no Callum Wilson, is he? He's nowhere near the level of Callum Wilson. And this is a guy who was signed as a direct replacement for Wilson. And I said on shows before, if this guy can get 6 or 7 goals between now and the end of the season, he'll be a good signing. But I'll be honest with you, I just can't see where the next goal, or where his first goal even, is going to come from. And it does worry me a little bit.
Yeah, it might be like Adam says, to be honest with you. Once one hits him and the arse and goes in, he might go on a little patch and get 4 or 5. You know, obviously we're learning to play to his strengths as well. Even with the fullbacks that we had, you know, that can deliver a ball, they didn't seem to whack in too many crosses for him, did they, Adam? They didn't seem to get down the line and get it across for him, did they? It was more Maxi just running around and skinning 6 or 7 players.
Yeah, although James makes a great point actually about the decoy element. So the one that stands out to me was actually a chance that I think in some ways Chris Wood created just by being in the box. So Matt Targett crosses it, and Ryan Fraser, you know, all 5'5" of them heads it from 8 yards out straight to the goalkeeper. But that defender got pulled towards Wood. Wood was sitting right in between the two centre backs, or the centre back and the left back perhaps, and so the left back gets pulled towards Wood, which is natural, right? When you've got 6'5" centre forward, whatever it is. So Ryan Fraser doesn't get that header if that defender isn't pulled towards Wood. Of course, you put Wood at the back post to head that, and maybe he scores. But in some ways, that might be the best situation for a target man like that. He's going to feel very isolated at times. He won a lot of flick-ons yesterday where there was no one running beyond him. So that's something for the team to work on. But if nothing else, he may just cause a massive amount of chaos in the center of the box for other people, hopefully, to score. You know, when that ball came back to Joe Linton from St. Maximum's run, where Joe Linton ends up kicking it into his own face, if that had been Chris Wood running onto that, you know, you'd feel more like that's a striker's chance. Joe Linton had his legs on backwards or something in that moment. I've just
replayed that in my head. It doesn't get any better than that chance. It really doesn't.
It's brilliant. It was brilliant. But maybe Chris Wood scores that if that's him running onto that and not Joe Linton. But again, Chris Wood was right in the middle of the mixer there. So I'm happy to see us with a guy right up there causing chaos. And again, it may actually end up creating more chances for other players. And Chris is just going to have to put up with that, I think.
Just before we kind of bring in the cameo of the man that James is dying to say his name again, because that was a lovely little introduction. Just before that, James, do you think Everton should have had a couple of red cards? I thought they were filthy. The stamp on I think it was Willock from Branthwaite off the ball, that was disgraceful. I don't know if you've seen that in the ground on the replays when he got back. And Dele Alli's tackle on Joe Linton was really over the top as well, mate. What did you think about Everton? I thought they were horrific. I thought they were just a shit, ugly side, mate.
Well, that was just pure frustration, wasn't it? They couldn't get into the game at any point. Look, they were forced to bring on a couple of substitutions early on with the Yerry Mina injury and Damari Gray, and I think that completely changed Lampard's game plan. If you look at the substitutions again, Calvert-Lewin must have been thinking, well, what have I got to do to get on? He would have came on Calvert-Lewin, I think, if it hadn't been for those substitutions. It could have been a slightly different game.
He would have caused trouble.
And he would have done, because he's a class act. I loved Calvert-Lewin. He's one of the best young English centre forwards around at the moment. I thought Richarlison was awful, if I'm honest. One of the worst games I've seen him play. And again, he's usually very reliable and can cause a lot of chaos. But Lampard got his game plan completely wrong yesterday. But then we took advantage. I actually thought Everton played really well against Brentford in the FA Cup on the weekend, and I watched those highlights and I thought, do you know what? We're going to be in for a tough game against these guys. But it was night and day. But again, we didn't allow them to play their usual game. I thought when Donny van de Beek came on, he offered nothing, absolutely nothing. And again, Dele Alli, rubbish. If you're an Everton fan right now, you're going to be pretty worried, really, really worried actually.
Yeah, they'd be dragged right into the ship.
Chris, the tackle that really made me mad was Gordon on was it St. Maximum?
Was it St. Maximum?
Well, no, he and Trippier
he kind of went in and he went right in on him, didn't he? Yeah, after Trippier had a bit of a ding dong with him. Yeah.
I thought that was a really, really bad tackle, and it was very clear what his intention was. Sometimes intention is worse than what actually happens, but he really jumped into that tackle. And what it doesn't matter now because we won the game, but it was very weird because the ref, Newcastle ended up kicking it out because they didn't want the advantage because Maximum was down. So he blew the whistle, didn't book the guy, which was amazing considering I thought it could have been a red. But then it was a drop ball. It wasn't even a free kick to Newcastle. So he played advantage. Newcastle kicked it out. We didn't get a free kick and their guy didn't get a booking. So I thought that was just a really weird 60 seconds or so. And again, it doesn't matter. But if he had gone on to score the winner, I would have been really, really upset that didn't work out differently. But again, in the end, it doesn't matter. But like I said,
just a quick one, guys. Sorry, Alan.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask just a quick one on the talk of challenges and cards and what have you. I just wanted to get your opinion on the Shelvey yellow card. What did you think?
I think he was lucky. He did play the ball. I think Shares was worse than his, or Shaw's was worse than his. He was very lucky that Lascelles was coming around the back of him. But that's the kind of thing Shelvey shouldn't be doing. And we'll come on to Bruno in a second. Maybe when Bruno's there, Shelvey doesn't have to make that tackle. But he's very lucky that he did get the ball, but it could have went the other way with Shelvey because he's got that reputation, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I mean, he was very lucky that it was just enough to the side and not from the back, just by inches, really. But you could see it was coming, right? Those tackles. I remember as a player, I used to love those tackles right by the side of the pitch. Clean the guy out.
Take the lad out if you can. Push him into the bushes.
on another day, that could have been a red, particularly as it was Shelvey, and that would have changed. Obviously, would have been a Kieran Clark situation, but that would have changed the whole outlay of the game, really.
Shelvey did well. I mean, other than that tackle, I thought, and then after the tackle, you got to give him the credit. He kept his head.
Yeah,
the Shelvey of old would have got sent off because I think I was even thinking. I think I even put in the group chat that we were in. I said that you need to get Shelvey off. You smell a red card coming, but credit to him, he kept his head, and maybe that's credit Eddie Howe for empowering him and having him a bit more of a kind of a grown-up player, really. So what's Mark saying there? The fact that Shelvey was off the ground, I'm surprised it didn't look again. Just because you want him suspended for Aston Villa, Mark. Come on, stop being naughty. Stop being naughty. But we've got to talk about the cameo. James, you were in the ground. Everybody was screaming for it. It's time to talk about Bruno, as the famous song goes, mate. We only had a little glimpse of it, but good God, he just looked like the most confident player I've ever seen strutting around St James's Park, mate. That back heel and step over. How close were you to that, mate? What a player he looks.
Yeah, it was amazing, and it was another good moment on a night that had many good moments, and that was kind of like the cherry on the cake, wasn't it? At the end, look, he was fortunate to come on in the position that we were comfortably winning the game, and he wasn't really tasked or asked to do much or influence the game. But you know what Bruno can do? He came on and he automatically looked like he'd been playing in the Premier League for 5 to 6 years, didn't he? The speed was no problem for him. He joined in with that attack at the end with Maximin, didn't he? Which nearly led to a goal. Imagine if he scored. I mean, wow, I mean, what a debut. But again, we're going to come on to talk about him a little bit later with the Villa preview, but I'll be really interested to see what Eddie Howe does with this team going in, and whether or not he does pick him at the expense of a midfielder, who knows. But yeah, it was brilliant. Really enjoyed seeing him there in the flesh finally.
Do you know what I loved about him, Adam, when he come on? James has touched on it there. That little through ball to Maxi. He didn't just stay. He went at real pace to try and get on it. And not only that, when the ball fizzled out, he gave one of them to the Everton player. And I thought, this lad's really hit the play, isn't he, mate?
Yeah, not only that, but he then went and G'd up the Gallagher right after that. I mean, I showed it on the TV at least. It was the perfect situation, like James said. It was. I mean, couldn't have asked for a better situation, right? 5 minutes, you're 2 goals up, home stadium's rocking, massive win on the cards. You get to just go out there and basically do whatever you want, don't you, for 5 minutes? And I don't think all those tricks and flicks are necessarily going to be, an everyday part of his game. I'd love it if it is, but I think that run and that pass and the follow-up is what we're going to expect out of a player like that. And we, again, going back to the point you made about Willock, is that Willock is the only other player that does that run after the pass that we've got. Yeah. So if Bruno's going to do that, that's different from what obviously Joe Linton gives you. It's different from what Shelvey or Longstaff or anybody else gives you. So we're going to need another player coming into the box to try and get goals now. Goals haven't been a big part of his career, but if he's going to make runs like that, having set up a player, St. Maximin's going to have to pass to him next time, because they gave each other a cheeky grin afterwards. But I think if it had been 1-1 or something like that, then different look on his face. But
I think Bruno bollocked him, didn't he? I think he went like, come on, like that. And
that was the only thing that Maxi got wrong on the whole night. That decision. Ball. Every other decision Maximin made on the night was 10 out of 10, but he just made the wrong one there. Of course,
if it goes in, then he does. If he scores, then it's a great decision. That's always the case with him. Yeah. But it was fun to watch, and then very interesting to see what happens this weekend with Bruno, like you said.
I love the comment there by Di. He looks sexy as fuck. It's quite funny because with him and Callum Wilson, it's a kind of game that you maybe don't want to take your missus to, Di, isn't it? Really, they might be like, bloody hell, look at these lads and look at the state of you, kind of a thing, So don't take the wives to the games, lads, because you never know what's going to happen there. But so I mean, just finished up the game, lads. Obviously, we're going to talk about Villa at the end of the pod. Buzzing, great result. And, I just think it's great to feel this way, isn't it, going into another game, looking at a third back-to-back win. It's just absolutely brilliant. But just talking about things off the pitch. So it's been doing the rounds on social media. It's been doing the rounds on all the main sporting channels. Just coming to you first on this, James, that Dan Ashworth, who's been a name that's been linked quite a lot for the director of football, kind of technical director roles. It really looks like this is the guy that the consortium want. This is the guy that they've thrown all the kind of eggs in going for. Maybe some of the names were kind of paper talk and just, social media rumors. But Dan Ashworth has left his post at Brighton. It looks like he might be spending a bit of time doing the gardening before he comes to us. Obviously, we're going to hopefully talk a bit more about it when it's confirmed on the Evermore podcast. But what's your initial reaction, James, about Dan Ashworth coming in? And what do you think he'll do to improve what's already, in the process of working with Eddie Howe?
Look, this is a massive statement of intent by the club. He comes with a glowing reputation for the work he's done over the years with the England national team and of course Brighton. This is a man who understands how to create a winning culture at a football club. Again, when you look at what England have achieved in recent years under his watch, winning the Nations League, getting the final of the Euros, this can all be attributed to the DNA and style of play he's brought to the national side. And look, he knows what it takes to assemble a successful team, a successful squad. And he will make a big difference to us when he does make that next step up and allows us to compete with the top teams. And look, I'm a big fan of Brighton, a huge fan of what he's achieved there and what he's done at that club. They're a club that, let's be fair, has punched above their weight for a few seasons. They play a lovely style of football, and you look at the kind of players he's brought into that team, the likes of Trossard, Mopé, Lamptey, Veltman, Cucurella. All very, very good signings. And in the case of Ben White, this is a club that has still managed to develop homegrown talent and made a huge sum of money in his sale to us. I think it was 50 million they made from him. So, look, Brighton operate on a very, very tight budget. They aren't a wealthy club. So for Dan Ashworth to achieve what he has done with very limited resources at Brighton, who knows what he can go on to achieve here at the richest club in the world.
Oh, I love to say that again, James. The richest club in the world. That was
The
a
richest club
lovely
in the
little
world.
talk about
Still got to pinch myself. Still got to pinch myself, mate.
Just one of them slaps around the face. Adam, what about you, mate? Dan Ashworth, you know what you know of him, mate. It does seem like a real kind of high caliber appointment if we get this guy in, doesn't it? There'll be a lot of salt poured on by the jealous fans again. I think it's already started on social media. He's here for the cash. I called him Dan Cashworth in a comment I put on there somebody's YouTube video the other day. But what's your gut feel about this, mate? Are you excited about this?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised it's taken this long to get someone sort of lined up for that role. I mean, I think that speaks a lot to what the owners have had to deal with in the first. It's only been 4 months, like 4 months and 2 days, I think, since they took over. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh on how long it's taken, and given what they've had to sort out and obviously get through a January transfer window. But yeah, I'm really excited. As James said, I mean, his history. Just sort of speaks to the pedigree of sort of appointment this is. His time with England, he gets credited for a lot of the success they're having now. He obviously gets credited with a lot of success of bringing through the young players that are in the first team squad now. And DNA was a really important statement that you made there, James. He's created a DNA that he's been able to take from England to Brighton and now on to Newcastle, hopefully. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. It sounds like we're probably looking at maybe 6 months before he can start, unless Newcastle sort out a compensation package. So hopefully they don't, they've spent 90 million on players. Hopefully they don't come up short on trying to get a technical director, and hopefully they pay the money and settle with Brighton, and he can start, much sooner than that. I think it's very important they start laying the foundations now for this upcoming transfer window, regardless of the league they're in. They need to start laying those foundations now. So really, really excited about this appointment. He's always the first thing I do on Football Manager is appoint Dan Ashworth as technical director. So
it's the hack. It's the surefire hack to win a game.
So just in the comments, I'm really excited.
Yeah, sorry, Adam. Just in the comments there, I had to post that died. Easy, James. Watch it now. Don't want any more Wales and England fights on the podcast, mate.
My lips are sealed, Chris. No, I love the banter between me and Di. It's great, and it's what football's all about at the end of the day.
100%. That's why he's done it. He's a cheeky devil. But no, listen, on the Dan Ashworth thing, I agree with both of you lads there. I think you've really articulated that really well. But I think the one thing for me that's really exciting about someone like Dan Ashworth coming in, and I was watching Peter Ramage talking about how they want to develop players in the academy the other day, and Peter Ramage seems, obviously ex-player, Whitley Bay lad, he seems like he's really keen on developing the players and getting the next generation of Newcastle players. Someone like Dan Ashworth, I think, will sit down with Peter Ramage and Eddie Howe, and they'll try and work out how we can fix this problem, because we just don't develop players. You be looking to make a starting 11 of decent homegrown players we've developed through the academy. From such a rich area of football and talent historically. Some of the best players that's ever played the game, originate from the Northeast. And we've been so poor at that for decades, really. So that's something I'm really excited about. A guy like Dan Ashworth who has a plan, who's willing to put a structure in place. You look at Manchester City. Arguably one of their best players is one of their own homegrown players in Phil Foden, and that's the kind of formula you want to replicate. If you want to be a really big club, yes, you can go buy £50 million Brunos and stuff like that, but you really want to make your own Brunos, don't you? You want to have £50 million players coming through. Not every club is going to have that class of 92 that Manchester United had. That was freak stuff, out of the blue stuff. But to have a good 3 or 4 steady players coming through the ranks and being in and around the first team, that's got to be a plan, isn't it, lads? James, what do you think of that, mate? What's your opinion on that for the youth?
It's very important as a football fan. You always want to see homegrown players succeed and the fans to get behind them. It hasn't really worked out for us in recent years, as you rightly say. I mean, the Longstaffs probably a notable example, and we've talked about them probably more than any other player on the show in recent weeks, haven't we? Look, again, it hasn't really worked out for them. Again, Sean was on the bench last night. I really struggle to see how we can come into this team now moving forward. But yeah, you like to see it. And I mentioned there again, Ben White, and look what he achieved at Brighton. He's an England international now. And the money they got for him. And look, if Dan Ashworth can come in, it's not going to happen overnight with homegrown talent. We know it's a project. It's a few years to develop these guys, bring them into the team. You got to start them in the cup games, etc., etc. And we do have a few players, out on loan at the moment who potentially could fall into that bracket. But yeah, very exciting times, Chris. And this is going to be, as Adam rightly said, this could be bigger than any signing that we made in January.
Absolutely.
Chris, just one more point on that. James just made me think of this. I think just as important as of any of the players that we signed in January, the ownership have been able to convince a guy who was doing very well at a team far above Newcastle in league position to leave his role. I know he's probably going to double his income. We'd all love to double our income. But more importantly, I think he's a guy of integrity. I don't think he walks away from Brighton just for the money. I think he walks away from Brighton because he's been convinced by Amanda Staveley and Mirdad and Jamie and co that there's a project here at Newcastle that he can have sort of open architecture over and a lot of control over. And that's clearly been proven out, that fact that he's leaving a very successful role at a good club to come and hopefully replicate that at Newcastle. Fingers crossed.
That's a great shot, Adam. And if you're watching Amanda Staveley and you want to double any of our incomes, please just drop a comment in there. We'll be glad to pick up with you after the podcast is finished. But just moving on, lads, to the next section, we're kind of coming into a bit of a debate here. This is a bit of a controversial topic, and it was something that we really wanted to look at. So the news broke about Callum Wilson's latest setback from injury. Now, before we get into this, before anyone goes nuts in the comments, all three of us and any of the lads who are on Evermore, and probably most Newcastle fans, adore Callum Wilson. He's a fantastic footballer, and he's an absolute goal machine. And we love the fact that he's at the club. He's a proper number 9, but his fitness record is becoming a real concern. And it isn't just at Newcastle where he's had these problems. So just Mark's done a brilliant slide for us here, just jumping into this. So we're going to look at this and then we're going to chew the fat over Callum Wilson. So this is Callum Wilson's statistics from 2015 to 2022 in terms of his total games to the right and his Newcastle appearances alone to the left. And you can see there, out of the 250 available or potential league games that he could have played between Bournemouth and Newcastle, he's only managed 57% of those, getting 59 goals, an average of 0.41 goals per 90 minutes. Very good goal return, but again, doesn't play much. And if you look at the Newcastle ones in isolation, he's played, there's been 60 games. He's only played 41. That's 60% of the games. He's got 80 goals and a goal return of 0.50. As we said there, guys, there's no doubting, coming to you first, Adam, on this, there's no doubting he's a hell of a player. But do we really need to look at a contingency plan here? And can we continuously rely on Callum Wilson, who's only fit 60% of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it just shows how over-reliant Newcastle and probably Bournemouth have been on Callum Wilson. He's scored every other game, but he's only playing in 60% of the games, So for a team that doesn't score many goals, last night, a little different, but generally speaking, we're a 1 or a 2 goal team. So to have a guy who scores every other game not available almost half the time makes it a very, very hard story to tell. He's a great player. He's a great lad as well. I think, again, another guy who's very, very popular in the dressing room. But no, I don't think we can rely on him. If he was 23, 24, and we were looking at, is he going to be there 4, 5, 6 more years? And maybe that's a different conversation. But the fact that he's probably in the last quarter or so of his career now, it's probably not a guy we can rely on regardless of division next year. So I think the club have probably come around to that. That's why we obviously had to sign Chris Wood. But I think they clearly wanted another striker towards the end of the transfer window. We could talk a little bit about how disappointing it was that they didn't get another striker in, the young lad from France in particular, who looks tremendous, by the way. So I think we do need, a striker in the squad who's under 23, under 24, who we can develop over the next couple of seasons. This sounds just like what Dan Ashworth's probably going to be doing, right, as we go forward. A goal scorer that we can really develop. So yeah, in short, we really cannot rely on Callum for the rest of this season, even going into next season. As much as it hurts to say, they do need to go out and sign, a brand new marquee centre forward, someone like Darwin Nunez or someone, Alexander Isak, someone along that sort of stature that we can rely on for 5 or 6 years to develop into another sort of classic Newcastle number 9.
James, you're a huge fan of Callum Wilson. You haven't hid that on any podcast I've ever been on with you, mate. But, does Adam make a good point there? This is a great player, but you can't rely on him when he's consistently picking up these niggly knocks through his career, can you?
Fully agree with absolutely everything Adam said, and it goes back to what I was saying on last week's show. I still thought we were a striker short after the January window. I want to make a point on this. I would be really interested to know when Eddie Howe found out about the extent of this injury, because this news broke to all of us fans on Monday, I believe, wasn't it? And it was a bit of a shock. Well, it was a huge shock, because as far as we were concerned, he was going to be back in March. If Eddie Howe was told about this, a few weeks ago, or possibly in the middle of January, then it really begs the question: why on earth didn't we not break the bank to get another striker in? Whether or not that would be Lingard. Look, you can't blame them for the Ekitike scenario. That was just unfortunate. It looked like that was a done deal on deadline day, and the player for whatever reason just didn't fancy it. But it does pay me to say this, because I am a huge fan of his, but I don't think he'll be our number one striker next season. I just don't think he can be trusted with that responsibility anymore, given his injury record. And look, it's not his fault. He doesn't ask to be injured. It's unfortunate. Sometimes players are just really unlucky in their careers with injury, and you just got to look at Andy Carroll, for example, to see what he's gone through in his career. And if we do stay up, we will surely go after a world-class striker in the summer. It's obvious we will. I mean, and not just to repeat what Adam says, but then Wilson, if he didn't then get moved on, he would be on the bench. I mean, I'd be surprised if Eddie Howe was going to play two strikers. It doesn't look as though that's in his remit. It looks like he likes to play one up front. But again, look, Wood's not going to be the answer long term either. But it is really, really, it kills me to say it, because I am a huge Wilson fan, but it could potentially, his Newcastle career might be over now.
It's a good point, isn't it? I think look at it. You've touched on the fact world-class strikers there. I mean, there is going to be some real talent available in the summer. There's already been talk about, obviously, Haaland having a £65 million buyout clause. I personally think he's headed to City, and that opens the door for another question I want to put to both of you. Actually, I'll start with you on this one, Adam. Harry Kane at Spurs. So Harry Kane's obviously at the peak of his career now. I know he's had a bit of an up and down season and things like that. Spurs, potentially, if they don't win anything this season, which it doesn't look like they will, if they get in the Champions League or not, if Man City have moved on from Kane and they want to throw money at Haaland, which is understandable, he's got his links with his dad, he's younger, everything else. Would you think that these owners, if we stay up and they want to throw the kitchen sink at it, do you think they consider Harry Kane, or is Harry Kane, past it kind of a thing, not the direction they want to look at?
Well, I think any team would take a look at Harry Kane if he became available. It'd be stupid not to. But I think it's funny you say that about Haaland. I don't think he's a Pep player. I'm just not sure he quite fits what they do. Now, obviously, Pep's a quality coach. He could adapt. The three of us and Haaland could play together for Pep, but that would be no problem. But I mean, so I'm not
James
sure.
Wouldn't pass the ball. James wouldn't pass the ball out of two balls. Really.
I've got a feeling. I've got a feeling that Haaland will maybe go to Spain. It'll be interesting to see how that develops. But you made an interesting point there. He is sort of the domino, isn't he, for all these world-class strikers? Like if he moves, then they all start moving. So if you make the assumption that we stay up, and you make the assumption that Tottenham don't get into the top four, then it could be very interesting summer for Harry Kane. Do you want a player that he'd clearly be coming for the money, wouldn't he, if he was to come to Newcastle? I mean, we're not on the level of Tottenham right now. We might be in 3 or 4 years, but then Harry Kane in 3 or 4 years is in his early 30s at that point. So I don't think he's probably not the sort of the player that they want in the group. Again, obviously, Harry Kane is a tremendous world-class striker. I'm not saying he isn't, but I think they're going for a type of player at the minute, sort of a type of personality and character, particularly in the summer. If we stay up, they're going to be reshaping this squad now with, I think, players 25 and below, because we've got a lot of players that are in that second half or that fourth quarter of their season, or of their career, excuse me. So I'm not sure he quite fits the character that they'd be looking for, but it will be very interesting to see the kind of striker they go for. And it is such a shame about Wilson, to the point that James just made. He is such a great character, clearly a great player. And I think actually, just quickly on the injury front, my gut tells me they didn't know the extent, because he's sort of been going back and forth. If you listen to the comments that he's made on that podcast that he does. 3 or 4 weeks ago, he sounded quite confident that he'd be back up and running at least in sort of like a 10-day, 2-week period. He went to Saudi Arabia with the squad. I don't think they would have done that if he wasn't going to be able, if they knew he wasn't going to be able to take part in any of the training sessions. I don't think it would have been worth taking him. They didn't take Isaac Hayden, for example. I think they may have been a little bit surprised in the last couple of weeks that he's actually going to be out a little bit longer. I think if they had known all of January that he was going to be out at least 3 more months, they would have reshuffled their priorities again. So I'm not quite sure when they found out. I don't think they were sort of keeping it from us, the extent of his injury or anything like that. I think it's come as a little bit of a surprise to them. Even Eddie's comments before the game last night, you could kind of tell that he was a bit, not pissed off, but he was a bit sort of taken aback, I think, by the fact that he wasn't going to have Wilson. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made the comment, I don't think, that they won't have him till towards the end of the season.
It's a shame. What do you think, James? Do you think it opens the door for maybe, kind of an Ekitike to come back in, in the summer? And, obviously his agent was quite vocal that they didn't believe in the long-term or short-term project. That kind of pissed me off a little bit as a fan. I understand he's a young lad and stuff, but I thought that was a bit unnecessary from his agent to gob off of that. I know some of these guys are just serial gobshites, but, do you think we'll go back in for that lad alongside the likes of Botman and younger players like that? Or do you think their ship sailed?
Firstly, Chris, Harry Kane, mate, what have you been drinking? Because I want a bit of that, pal, please.
Three points do magical things to you.
They do, mate. They do. Look, we're nowhere near the level of attracting someone like Harry Kane just yet. Look, we will be in a few years' time, but we just got to take it one step at a time. I think someone on the lines of a Calvert-Lewin, I know we mentioned him earlier, maybe an Ollie Watkins, although Mark will not fancy me for saying that, but someone of that kind of ilk of player that I think we should maybe be going for, instead of the superstars of the likes of the Kanes, the Mbappes, the Haalands, who we just have absolutely zero chance of attracting in the summer. But yeah, going back to Ekitike, again, like you, I was disappointed with that, and we are building a squad around players with the right mentality, with the right character, with ambition, of course, as well. But I think Ekitike didn't really do himself, his agent, that is, didn't do themselves huge favours to endear themselves to the Geordie faithful with some of those comments. But look, he is still young. He's only 19. At that age, you are naive. You don't really know the world properly yet. And he'll probably make more mistakes again. But do we know enough about this guy to really build a team around him? It depends. He's certainly got talent. But I think certainly, as I say, the likes of someone like Ollie Watkins or Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I would break the bank to get one of those two in the summer, because I think they'd be a fantastic addition to this squad.
It would be very, very, very good shout, mate. I'd love to see Dominic Calvert-Lewin walking on the quayside with them skirts on that he wears, mate. That'd be quite interesting. But Mark's already told you off there. Hands off, Ollie, which is a lovely segue.
Sorry, Mark, mate.
Yeah, a lovely segue into our final section of the podcast, which is Villa next. So we're taking on Villa, and Steve Gerrard is coming to St James's Park. So just coming to you first on this one, Adam. The Villa are a good side. Obviously, we know Mark, my partner in crime at the Slider Rule Pass, and our graphics man is Villa through and through. But are you feeling a lot more confident now? 2 back-to-back wins, watching that performance. Do you think that we've got enough to really stick it to the Villa, or do you think we still need to be worried about this side? I personally am, because I think they are a good side, mate. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, I'm confident enough to think we might sign Harry Kane this summer.
Now you are, mate. I've made a believer out of you, Adam. I've made a believer.
Can we clip that for Twitter for next week, Chris, by the way, please?
Hey, Trippier's already on the phone, lad. He's already saying that. So.
I want to answer Brian's comment question that he asked quickly
Brian
as well.
Did go in there. Yeah, I'll pull that back up. So yeah, Brian did make a point about Eddie Howe. Then we'll come on to the Villa, mate. Go on. So
mostly because Brian's a really good friend of mine, so I know him really well.
Sorry, Brian.
No,
sorry, mate. I was running out of time.
It's all good. I think the short answer to that question, which is a really good question, I think a lot of Newcastle fans are thinking about this, and every time we win, it goes a little bit further, right? So I think the short answer is Eddie Howe goes as far as he deserves to go into this rebuild. Yes. I mean, if he keeps them up this year, they'll be putting a statue next to Sir Bobby. I mean, it would be an amazing thing, historic, if he keeps them up this year, given where they were when he came in. So I think he buys as much time as he deserves. I see no reason why Eddie Howe can't be Newcastle manager for 5, 6, 7, 8 years if he continues to develop a character of team, develop an identity to the group. That this whole club needs to be rebuilt from the boardroom to the playing staff to the manager to the training ground to the academy, there's no reason that Eddie can't be, a seriously long-term Newcastle manager. He's got 2 years after this season, but it wouldn't surprise me actually. I was thinking about this last night. If he keeps them up, wouldn't surprise me if he signs an extension this coming summer. No reason why they wouldn't lock him down to an extra couple of years if he keeps them up. So I think it would be really interesting to see. But again, he can go as long as he continues to deserve to be there. I think he can be a part of this, and that might be why they hired him in the end, because he can.
Yeah, I think
they can kind of see 2 or 3 steps in advance with Eddie as the manager.
He's young enough to evolve as well, isn't he? He's
Yeah.
still a young manager, and I think he's young enough to get older. No, he's not like Steve Bruce, 106 and setting his ways and all that nonsense, and loves bacon. He's obviously got a chance to progress and change as a manager. But just going on to the Villa, Adam. So how do you feel about the Villa? Are you concerned, mate? Very good side, I think. Very talented players. Obviously, Target can't play, which is a bit of a bastard after the way he played the other night, mate. Just quickly on the Villa, mate. What's your take? And then we'll get James's take on it too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling really good, and particularly if Kieran Trippier came through that injury, if it's not serious and he's available, that's really, really important. I think he probably will be. My guess is we would have heard by now if he wasn't, or we certainly will in the next 24 hours or so. So feeling really good. Villa are an excellent team. They're not in the top half yet, but they may well be. They play Leeds tonight, which is a really interesting game given where Leeds are. Do we want Villa to win to keep Leeds in it, but that gives them some momentum? Do we want Villa to play poorly and lose, but then Leeds are probably out of it? So it's a really interesting night. Maybe a 0-0 draw would be perfect for that. But yeah, I feel like there's a win to be had. But because I'm a pessimist, if he offered me a draw right now, I'd probably take it.
Pragmatist, Adam. Pragmatist. We've even rattled Mark, James. We've even rattled Mark in the comments there. He was confident a week ago, but obviously Newcastle on the up, and if ASM's on one, Mark is worried. I mean, if ASM's on one, I think Lampard said it. I don't think anybody can stop him when he's like that. But what's your take, James? Are you feeling confident, mate? Super confident? Or are you quite cautious?
Lads, Villa are a completely different proposition to Everton and Leeds. Adam touched on that before. They are much better organised. They've got much more quality up front. I mean, their front three, my bad, Buendia, Coutinho and Watkins. I mean, that's as good as any in the Premier League, to be honest with you. They've got a hell of a midfield as well. Jacob Ramsey, John McGinn. They've got such a huge goal threat from so many different positions on the pitch. And look, you all know how much I rate Steven Gerrard as a manager. I think he's done a phenomenal job so far at Villa. And look, he can go on to become one of Villa's best managers. I do think he'll win a trophy with them. Whether or not it'll be this season, next season, who knows? But I do think he'll have a massive impact on that team, though. But what I will say about Villa defensively, they can be got at. Tyrone Mings, he's got a mistake in him. Luca Dean, Matty Cash, very good players, but they're not the best defensively. They offer much more going forward in an attacking sense. So I do think we'll score, but I do think we will concede at the same time. Either way, it's going to be a great game. I think I read a stat earlier today that we've not won 3 league games on the bounce since 2018. So that would be another kind of hoodoo off our back if we can get that one. But yeah, I'm going to be keeping a keen eye on the game, on their game against Leeds tonight, which kicks off in 40 minutes. I'll be watching that one, and as Adam said, you probably want a 0-0 in that one. But look, I think it's going to be a tough game, much tougher than Everton. But I think we've got enough to get something from the game. But I do think it'll finish 2-2, and I think that would be a good point for us as well.
It's interesting because with Chris Wood, I mean, obviously Mark speaks a lot about Tyrone Mings, and we've had Rich on from Villa Park Pod before on the show, who's brilliant on the slide rule pass. And Mings seems to, when there's a big, strong, burly striker, he seems to make it his mission to out-muscle the guy, and then he makes mistakes. And weirdly enough, Chris Wood might be the best striker to almost go up against Mings and tie him up and make him, get drawn out into a battle, and then that'll free space, as Adam rightly said before, as a decoy for, ASM and Fraser to kind of nip in through the lines, or even Willock if he's making those runs forward. So I probably feel a bit better about Wood playing up against Mings, and I think Wood will probably like that game as well. So it's an interesting one. I mean, I think you're right, James. We're a totally different outfit to Everton. And I think for me, for my point, before we get Adam's prediction, I think this will be a much harder game. I'm actually going for a 1-1 draw here. I think that Villa have got a lot about them. I think with Coutinho he's got magic in his boots. I think anyone who doubted him, the little cameos you've seen thus far, just should tell you we're completely wrong to do that. They've got a lot of quality there, but I do think that they do have a Rick at the back, mate. Absolutely. The big thing for me is obviously we'll have to change a winning side. Matty Targett can't play. Left back, get your opinion this in a second, lads, but left back, I think you're either looking at Manquillo coming in or even shifting Dan Burn out to left back. I'm not sure that he'll play Dan Burn as a left back. I think you might stick Manquillo in, and Burn might have to wait for his debut. What's your take on that quickly, lads? Adam, were you first? Who's going to slip in at left back for you, mate, on this one?
I think what will be interesting to see, I think Manquillo and Trippier will be the two fullbacks, but I'm not sure which way they'll play. It might be a little bit on, whatever side Coutinho ends up playing might be the one that Trippier takes. So Trippier is probably the better defensive marker of a player like Coutinho. So if Coutinho is moving around, you might see Trippier sort of man marking across the pitch, which will be really interesting, make for a really interesting watch. Dan Burn, I think Dan's going to have to wait unless one of the centre backs can't play. They've had back-to-back really strong defensive performances now, Leeds and obviously last night against Everton. So I think he has to stay in with those two. And then the big one obviously is in midfield. For me, Bruno needs to start. Very, very harsh on either of the three that you take out. But for me, it's Joe Linton. I think you have Bruno and Shelvey sit in front of the back four a little bit deeper. And that allows Willock, to James's point, that allows Willock to continue to get forward and almost play like a number 10 behind Wood, or certainly join in the play a lot more than he's been able to so far. So those are the changes for me. The Target one obviously enforced. And then I think you have to get Bruno in for Joe Linton. It's harsh on Joe Linton, unfortunately, but that's just where we are.
Interesting comment there, as Mark slipped in as an Aston Villa fan, if people don't know watching. So Joe Linton had Mings' life last season. He wound him up, and that's the way to target him. James, you've often said how strong Joe Linton is, and that's one of his biggest assets. And obviously Mings does get tied up in these battles. It's a good point Adam makes, I think. In terms of ability, I think Bruno, Shelvey, and Willock are the three, but do we keep Joe Linton in for his kind of physical attributes and tie Mings up or not? Or will Chris Wood do that job and we don't need Joe on the park for that?
Well, Joe Linton's playing a completely different position now under Howe than what he was playing last season under Steve Bruce. I mean, he's it's like a different player, arguably. So will Joe Linton be in and around Mings for that much of the game? Probably not. I mean, set pieces he will be. But I think an interesting one on the team is, will Trippier be fit to play? Because he did come off last night.
He's coughed, didn't he?
Yeah, and, I don't know the extent of that injury. I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. But if he's missing for whatever reason, or they don't risk him because they don't want to aggravate the injury or whatever it might be, we've got a big problem there with down those sides. So I'm sure it'll be fine. But going back to the left back conundrum as well, I would probably go with Manquillo. I think Manquillo is a safe pair of hands. He's done enough this season in games to know that you can trust him. He was excellent when he came on against Leeds not so long ago. I think, as Adam says, we're going to have to wait just a little bit longer until we see Dan Burn.
See the big Burn. So I've gone for 1-1. You're 2-2, James. Adam, what's your prediction, mate, for the game, and then we'll sign off.
Oh, well, I almost never back Newcastle to win, but I'm going to go 2-1 Newcastle.
Oh, well said, mate. Hey, do you know what? I actually called last week. I called 3-1, didn't I, James? You thought I was drunk with transfer juice, and you
did, mate. You did. You got to bang on. You got to bang on.
I even said Trippier with a screamer against Pickford.
I take it you had a bet on then, yeah?
I didn't, mate. Honestly, I think that's how pessimistic I was. Absolutely.
Come on.
So we've gone for a draw. Adam's gone for a win. But listen, guys, it's great. As I said before, it's great to just go into games feeling confident, like you've got a chance. Do you know what I mean? It's been so long for us, hasn't it? And certainly the work Eddie Howe's put in, going back to your point Brian made before there, you rightly say, Adam, he's earned that chance. You can see the progression now. It's now turned into performances. And let's hope we'll get better and better. 2-1 to the tune, says your mate Dan. James, that's fantastic. I would love to see that win.
Good lad.
Yeah, if we get 3 wins back to back, Jesus, we'll all be dancing around with inflatable T-Rexes in Northumberland Street, like whoever that fan was who did that with Pickford. It deserves a free season ticket, in my opinion. Lads.
Deserves a mention. Andy had Ginola on the back of his shirt as well, so I love him.
Oh God, you can't get any better than that, can you? God, he's just setting all standards. Mark says he'd say a score draw, but yeah, one thing's for sure. I think it is going to be a decent game. We know Villa are a dangerous side, but I think confidence is high as long as Trippier can make it through that knock, as you say, lads. And an ASM can turn up and put another shift like that. I think we've got every chance to get a result. But that's everything we've got time for this week, guys. Thank you so much, everybody, in the comments for signing in. If you like this kind of thing, please remember to click like and subscribe. We are only 5 subscribers away for smashing that 100 barrier. Would love to get there. If you can get us there, guys, please come and join the Evermore podcast and the Slide Rule Pass YouTube channel. We've got loads of good content on there. It's growing every single week as well. But thanks to the lads for joining me, and let's keep supporting that team. We'll call United, and we'll see you next week, lads.
All right. See you guys.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Bye.